Flowing water is a cool asset to have at a nature center for a lot of reasons. It's something that people really enjoy. Sometimes, though, you get too much of a good thing. And I was reminded of that this past week when we had just a torrent of rain in southwest Missouri, in some places 8 to 10 inches over the course of a week, which meant that there were a lot of places that flooded. And one of the places that flooded was the Springfield Conservation Nature Center here in Springfield, a place I know well. I ran it for 10 years. And the Nature Center here in Springfield is built on Lake Springfield, which is an impoundment that tends to flood when we get an awful lot of rain. Now, the building is not in the floodplain, it's not vulnerable, but the whole trail system, or virtually the whole trail system, is floodable and did in fact flood. And that, of course, creates hazardous conditions. It means you have to close trails, you have to notify your public. So there's a lot of things that it demands of the management of any nature center. And for that reason, it's really important for every nature center, every environmental learning center, to have an emergency plan. An emergency plan that covers not just floods, but the whole cross-section of things that conceivably could happen at your site. Part of the challenge is every site is unique. Every place is different. So you can't just go on the web and download an emergency plan. You have to create your own that fits the kinds of threats, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, all the kinds of things that might be unique to your site. You got to be ready. So you develop a plan. There are sources of information on the web, at least for templates and things that will tell you the sorts of elements your plan should have. And I'm showing you some of those sources here. And there are others as well, I'm sure you can find. The important thing is that you develop a plan, that you don't put it off. And the second most important thing is that once you have a plan, you practice it. That you actually have your staff and volunteers go through the motions of, for instance, leaving the building as if there was a fire and reconvening at a predetermined site. Things of that nature are important not only to write in a plan, but to actually practice. I'm reminded of some years ago when I was running the Springfield Nature Center early in its existence. We had a similar flood that created actually a lot of damage to our recently completed boardwalks because at that time they had been untested and they floated up and it made a mess of one of them. And a few days later, we got a call from the local minimum security prison asking if they could bring a crew out to help us rebuild that damaged boardwalk. Useful for us as a sister, we were run by another state agency, and useful for them because it gave their inmates an opportunity to do some practical work. So they came out, brought a crew of, I think, 12 inmates out, worked all day helping rebuild our boardwalk, came out at the end of the day. Unfortunately, they only had 11 inmates when they came out. As you can imagine, that created emergency number 2 for us. And part of the emergency that time was managing the media, because that hit the police scanners, and we had all the local television stations out there filming sheriff's deputies standing around with shotguns and other things that you really would prefer not to see on television about your center. That's the kind of thing that needs to be in your emergency plan. How do you handle the communication that inevitably accompanies some sort of an emergency? Lots to cover. Right now I'm just urging you, if you don't have an emergency plan, to get one, and here's hoping you never have to use it. Helping nature centers succeed in a 21st century world, I'm Dave Cattell.